The latest Republican primary just wrapped up in Georgia, and while of course Trump won, what with it being a one-person race, there were yet again some serious warning signs for him. First and foremost, the fact that this is a state Trump lost by 12,000 votes in 2020, and yet now, Trump has over 90,000 protest votes against him. In other words, far from making inroads with those 12,000 voters, he's pushed over 90,000 of them away. Talk about a brutal night for Trump. In fact, take a look at DeKalb County. The guy is up by 16 points in a single-person race. Nikki Haley literally dropped out, and she's within 16 points of the guy. Now, in fairness, early voting opened up while Haley was still in the race, but the fact that Haley is now out of the race doesn't automatically mean that all of those voters aren't still disgusted enough with Donald Trump that they were looking to make that disgust known. And that's been a recurring phenomenon in the Republican primary. Think about his margins in recent contests. 51% in Iowa, 54% in New Hampshire, 60% in South Carolina, 33% in Washington, D.C., 68% in Michigan, 46% in Vermont. None of those were runaway wins for the guy, and in fact, a few of them were even losses, which is only highlighted by the fact that Joe Biden is winning his primary contest almost exclusively with results in the 90s, which is not to say that Trump was ever in danger of losing the primary. In fact, both Trump and Biden wrapped up their respective parties' nominations within the last 24 hours, but it's how Donald Trump wrapped up the nominations that exposes some serious problems for the Republican nominee. Not only does his performance highlight Trump's pattern of weakness within his own base, not only does it undermine his perceived strength that he's some master politician who can't stop winning, but most importantly, Nikki Haley successfully identified thousands upon thousands upon thousands of voters that the Biden campaign can flip. She basically left the Democrats a blueprint of exactly what persuadable voters are out there. And I'm sure that the Biden campaign wasted exactly zero time in targeting them. In fact, during my latest episode of Inside the Right with Tim Miller, he explained that even Biden's State of the Union speech seemed engineered to appeal to exactly those voters.
I thought the more interesting thing, rather than the vigor, was the degree to which they were intentionally trying to talk to the Nikki Haley voter and to my people, like the former Republican types. I mean, there was a little bit of trying to talk to the left. Of course, they did abortion. They talked about adding the being able to get the aid into Gaza, right, and how they're changing the policies on that. So there was some talking to the left, but man, there was a big focus at the top of the speech. We're going to talk about Ukraine. We're going to talk about attacking Putin. I will not bow down to Putin. That was a big subtweet at Trump, right? I will not bow down, Biden says. Then he quotes Reagan, right? Then you get into January 6th and talk about, the defense of democracy. Later in the speech, I think you start talking about NATO, some of these other issues. He mentioned increase in police funding, right? It seemed to me like it was very. Yeah, exactly. And then the border funding, and mentioning James Langford, and cutting James Langford, who's the conservative Oklahoma senator who's in the crowd, while his colleagues are like booing Joe about saying that, hey, we're going to fund the border more, and saying that's not true. And Langford is mouthing, the TV cameras catch him mouthing, that is true, right? So, I thought that was just extremely intentional last night. I thought it was smart. He's going to have to keep doing it. It's not just a one-off, right? Because I think that there's some folks, obviously like myself and some others, that already made the switch, moved over to Biden, but there's more meat on that bone. There are more people. I know them. We talked to them in the focus groups for the Bulwark. I have some of them in my life who voted for Trump, and then January 6th happened, and they were off the train, and then now it gets further away from January 6th. They start to want to go back to the team they've always been on, and so you got to keep talking to them, keep messaging to them, and I thought that last night was very strong on hitting that audience. All of these people, they're like, deep in their hearts, they're Republicans. And so, you know what I mean? And so you have to keep reminding them, keep nudging them. And I think it's doable. I think it's gettable. You saw it in these primaries, which we've been talking about. There is a subset of people, but, that's why they're swing voters. You're going to have to work them over, and they're going to have some views that are a little bit not great.
And by the way, if you needed an indication of what those voters are like, here's a montage put together by Republican voters against Trump.
I'm a former Trump voter.
I voted for Donald Trump in 2016 and 2020.
In 2020, I voted for Trump again.
I will never support Donald Trump.
I will not vote for him in 2024.
He's got so much baggage.
Trump is the biggest threat to our democracy.
He kept denying.
And he lost the election.
Donald Trump was responsible for the violence on January 6th.
He could have prevented it.
Trump talking about retribution.
Retribution and going after people is disrespect of our military.
The military people that he's disgraced.
91.
91
criminal felonies,
4 different indictments.
He mishandled classified documents.
Taking documents.
now his desire to do away with NATO.
Donald Trump talks about abandoning Ukraine.
He said he'll be a dictator on day one.
If he's going to be a dictator on day one, he's going to be a dictator, period.
That kind of stuff scares me.
Absolutely scares me.
A second Trump term would be worse than the first.
A second term for Trump
Would be far more extreme.
It is dangerous, outright dangerous.
I cannot support Donald Trump again.
I'd never vote for him again.
He'll never get my vote, ever, ever.
In other words, despite the constant barrage of breathless Trump supporters fawning over their God King in some diner somewhere that gives us the impression that he's invincible, clearly that's not the case, as evidenced by looking at these primaries in state after state, or simply listening to these voters themselves. Now, with that said, here's the usual caveat, and it's an important one. Ignore the primary results, ignore the polls. We should always act as if Donald Trump is up by 90 points. That means we keep organizing, we keep working on our circles of people, we keep spreading good information about what this administration has done that the media refuses to cover. And most importantly, we don't get complacent because we see a good poll, and we don't give up in despair because we see a bad poll. This is all noise. The work we do between now and November is all that matters. So why cover these primary contests? Because it's telling us an important message, that Donald Trump is vulnerable and that we can win. Again, that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, because it's not, and it's going to require work and patience, but even Republican base voters are broadcasting that Donald Trump is in trouble. So our job is to do whatever we can to put together a coalition of Democrats and independents and pro-democracy Republicans who recognize the abject danger posed by the guy. This isn't to make you complacent, it is to let you know that it's possible, that it's within our grasp. So find your circles, the 1 or 2 or 3 people in your lives who don't vote, who aren't interested in politics, who are ill-informed about what's going on, and make them your responsibility ahead of November. Here's my pitch. Joe Biden beat Donald Trump by only 2 votes per precinct in Wisconsin in 2020. That's it. 2 votes per precinct was the difference between a Biden win and a Trump win in the tipping point state, which should serve to underscore the impact that you bringing out 2 or 3 voters who wouldn't have otherwise voted in this election could otherwise have. It might feel small, but the margins in these elections are small. Right now, politics is a game of inches, so please make sure to do your part and to help Joe Biden and the Democrats gain every inch we can get, if for nothing else than the preservation of democracy itself. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to this channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.